welcome back to the madness. So sad to say, this is our last day. It's day 8 of the Storybook countdown to Christmas. Okay, Beck, what book are we doing today?
An Unexpected Gift. Jesse Torres was waiting in the courtroom for the judge to call his name. He glanced over at his mother and knew she was still angry with him by the way she stared straight ahead at the judge. Mom had this nervous body language anytime a family member was in crisis. She walked with stiff, robotic movements, and her eyes seemed to enlarge, like they were about to jump out of her head. During the past several weeks before Jesse's court date, he pretended to all the boys that he was not the least bit afraid. But truth be told, he was scared. And sitting there next to his very nervous mother was making him even more nervous. His mother and father were good parents, better than most. Yet, at 17, Jesse could not get along with his father, or with any other male authority figure who tried to control him. How many arguments in the last month did he have with Poppy? That was the nickname his mother said Jesse gave his father when he was 2 years old. All Jesse wanted to do was hang out with his friends, party a little, and date girls. He tried to tell his father that he wasn't a gangbanger or anything like that, but all Poppy ever did was to throw Jesse's friends and his trouble in his face. You think being in a gang will make you a man? You think carrying a gun makes you tough? Go to work every day. Go to college, then I'll respect you, his dad would say. Jesse had been arrested twice in the last 4 months, once for destroying school property, and once for drinking and disturbing the peace, when he broke some windows in a vacant house. Here it was, the first week of December, and he had already been suspended from school 5 times. Jesse Torres, the sound of his name echoed through the courtroom. It made him feel like a little boy, and he wanted to crawl into his mother's arms. She took his hand, but he quickly shook it loose. There was no time for that, not here. He might know someone. The judge's bench looked big and intimidating from where Jesse stood. His case was assigned to Judge Warner, the same white man he had had from the beginning. Jesse did not like him, but his mother said he was a fair man, and that was all you needed. Warner addressed Jesse directly, locking eyes as he spoke and making Jesse feel like a trapped animal. Young man, this is the second and last time I'm going to see you. Do you understand me? Jesse stood speechless. Warner was about to send him to juvenile hall, and now he was sorry that he had not stopped screwing around. You have a good mother, son, Warner continued, and that makes you very fortunate, because I know she is fighting for your well-being. I'm going to give you a community service assignment instead of sending you to juvenile hall. Judge Warner picked up a piece of paper and looked down at it to examine the information. It says here that you've been suspended from school for 10 days. Jesse and his mother nodded. Then you have a 2-week Christmas holiday, is that correct? Yes, his mother answered quickly and happily. Her tight movements and stiff head seemed to have relaxed. The tension had shifted from Jesse and his mother to the people behind them in the courthouse who were waiting their turn for judgment. I'm telling you this as sincerely as I possibly can, young man. Do not make the mistake of appearing before me again, or I will hit you hard. I hope you learn something by giving back to the community during the next 2 months. Warner and Jesse's mother nodded to each other with mutual respect and agreement. They were led over to the bailiff for Jesse's work detail assignment, and Jesse let his mother take the envelope from the clerk. He wondered what would happen if he did not show up for his work assignment. Before he had a chance to finish the thought, Judge Warner spoke to him. Mr. Torres, if you miss one day, I will find you in contempt of this court and send you to juvenile hall. Believe me when I tell you, you will not like it there. Jesse looked at the judge, startled by Judge Warner, who seemed to have intercepted his thoughts and threw them back at him to rethink. When he stepped into the bright sunlight outside the courthouse, Jesse could hardly believe it was December. The street was crowded with people in a hurry. He and his mother made it over to a hot dog cart, getting a couple of dogs and a Coke for lunch. "Did you see where I have to go?" Jesse asked, nervous with the prospect of this new challenge. His mother handed him her Coke and dug into her oversized purse for the envelope. They found seats on the wall outside the courthouse and enjoyed the 70-degree Southern California weather. The two of them opened the envelope. It read, Pony Express. "It's a program for disabled children," his mother said in between sips of her soda. "I know, Mom. I can read," Jesse said, annoyed. On the way home, his mother stopped at St. Mark's to light a candle. Jesse sat in the car just to spite her. His mother had asked him earlier to go with her to St. Mark's to thank the Lord for being with him today. Of course, that started an argument. On the drive from the courthouse, his mother counseled him about his spiritual life and how, if Jesse let him, Jesus could help. "If he really wanted to help me, why didn't he get me off scot-free?" Jesse said sarcastically. His mother parked in the lot behind the beautiful old church. She did not get upset with him the way his father did. When she got out of the car, all Mom did say was a brief word. "If you change your mind." Jesse decided to sit out in the car and feel sorry for himself rather than give in to his mother's wishes. While driving home from the church, his mother drove them past Little Mario's Quadruplex, where Jesse's crew was hanging out in the small front yard of the property. Music was blaring through the open windows, and he could see beer cans on the porch. None of them was a gang member, but Jesse knew some of them had the potential for big-time trouble. He slid down in the car to avoid being seen by any of them. Jesse spent a fitful night and finally crawled out of the bed near dawn when he heard his father in the kitchen. Poppy was getting ready for work, making oatmeal when Jesse walked in. His father ate oatmeal every morning during the work week, and Jesse joined him at the table for a bowl. He was nervous about his first day at the Pony Express. He watched the clock the way he used to as a young child. Jesse recalled hating his first year of school. He hadn't wanted to leave his mother. The sound of the loud muffler outside the rented house announced that his father's ride to work had arrived. His dad's attention moved to the front door, and his parting words were, "Keep your mind open today. Good luck." While watching his father walk out the door, Jesse thought how hard it was to grow up and let go of the needs that were typically thought of as childish. Everything inside of him wanting to jump up and run out to the door yelling, "I love you, Poppy." But of course, his pride and self-image of himself would not allow that to happen. "Why are we leaving so early?" Jesse asked his mother as she started the car, giving the 1974 Monte Carlo time to warm up. "I'm not sure where we're going. It's better to be early than to be late." They sat in silence for a moment. "You don't want to make a bad impression," she added. Jesse turned on his hard guy attitude and then slouched down in his seat. "I don't care what impression I make." His mother backed out of the driveway. "Well, I do." He hated being so close to becoming a man, yet needing his mother and father so much. Jesse felt he could have been 5 years old and heading off to kindergarten. His heart sank when his mother pulled off Sunland Avenue and onto the dirt road with a large sign for Pony Express. Why did he feel inadequate now when he could walk the streets unafraid? "It'll be all right, Jesse," his mother said as she pulled into one of the many parking spots. "Do you want me to come in with you?" Jesse looked at her like she had gone mad. Of course he wanted her to come in with him, but he would never admit it or allow it. Jesse completed paperwork in a small mobile home that served as the organization's office. He was given a brief synopsis of what would be expected of him. Carla, the woman in charge, was younger and prettier than Jesse expected. "Your task is very simple," she said. "You spot for the physical therapist who works with the children on either side of the horse. You also might be expected to carry one of the children to the horse and, afterward, back to his parent." Jesse walked down the sloping hill with several instructors who were leading their horses to the riding area. A few volunteers were already waiting when the group arrived at the riding site. Jesse wondered whether any of them were from the work program. The first of the children began to arrive, and Jesse watched the interaction between the volunteers and the children. It was obvious they knew each other well. Immediately, he felt like an outsider and wanted to slip away, but instead he sat on the bench far enough away to discourage conversation. The morning was chilly, and Jesse wished he brought a sweater instead of a jacket. A young girl about his age came into the riding area and sat at the opposite end. Watching her discreetly, he was keenly aware that she was also a new volunteer. He could tell by the stiffness of her body and the way she said hello to the parents. It was the way people greeted one another in a doctor's office or a courthouse. He leaned back and let his back press against the bench. He closed his eyes and he wished he were anywhere but there. He began his favorite daydream, which was climbing a mountain. "Jesse!" The sound of his name made him jump. He looked around for the person who had called him. A girl, about 19, who was apparently in charge of scheduling, was staring at him. He could not remember her name. "Spot for Jennifer," she said, looking from him to the area where Jennifer was working. Jesse looked at the other volunteer and then back to the girl with the clipboard. "Why me?" he asked, a little embarrassed after the words came out of his mouth. "I need someone strong to help with Brady," she said, not looking up from her clipboard. While walking out to the horse, he had to admit that he liked her answer. "Most people are trying to get over on you," he thought silently to himself. Just as quickly he heard his voice saying, "Jesse, why do you think like that?" "Damn," he thought, "I can't get away from Poppy." Trying hard to get his walk down, in case anyone was watching, Jesse bobbed over to the horse in his best street strut. He felt uncomfortable and a little apprehensive when he reached Moonglow. He stroked her sides, not wanting to show he was afraid of her, but the truth was that he had never spent any time around horses, and he was uneasy. Damn, if he was honest with himself, he was downright afraid of them. A child was sitting on the horse directly in front of the physical therapist, Jennifer. Brady was a puny little boy with severe cerebral palsy. Jesse had heard of cerebral palsy, but he had never been this close to anyone with the condition. He stepped back slightly, put off by the child's contortions, but quickly regrouped when he realized that the little boy was staring down at him from the horse. Brady had a tiny face with large green eyes that seemed lit from the inside. Jesse looked into his little face and smiled, and Brady smiled back at him. Jesse quickly picked up the rhythm of the activity. Jennifer stretched Brady's body with a variety of positions on the horse while encouraging him verbally. Jesse listened and watched. The half hour ended quickly, and Jennifer asked Jesse to carry Brady back to the woman he presumed was his mother. The child felt to Jesse like a fragile piece of glass in his arms. The boy looked up into Jesse's face with total confidence. Feeling Brady's calves, Jesse realized his legs were different in size. His right leg was small, but kind of normal size, but the left leg was a twig. The bones were unusually thin and brittle. Taking inventory of the tiny body he held in his arms, Jesse noticed that Brady's arms and hands were curved inward toward the body in a clenched position. Confusion and sorrow, as well as total happiness, filled his first week of work. His mother and father had always instilled in him that he should pray for people who were less fortunate than he was. Although Jesse had never heeded those words before, he now found himself praying for every child that he spotted for. The ironic thing about praying for children was that at first, Jesse did it out of his own fear. Walking next to the horses, he found himself saying, "Oh Lord, please help me calm down. I am so nervous that I'm having a hard time talking to the kids." It must have been a natural progression because he soon found himself praying for each child he met, and eventually he found himself having a lot of fun. One morning, Jesse was working with a little boy named Chris, who had to use crutches to walk. The lesson started out typically until the horse developed a really bad case of flatulence. Jesse began to blame Chris for the passing of the gas, which Chris thought was hilarious after he got over the initial shock of being accused of such loud ones. Before long, Jesse felt at home with the people from Pony Express, especially the children. Coming to work was becoming a positive in his life, and he began looking forward to each new day. Jesse no longer felt uncomfortable carrying the children to the horse and back to their parents. In fact, he used that time to say a quick prayer over them and to tell them how cool he thought they were. Looking at these children and their disabilities, Jesse came to realize that their strength of spirit was bigger than their ailments. Slowly, Jesse began to spend less and less time with the boys, and more time at home with his family. One evening, he was sitting on the sofa watching his family in action. His mother, who took great pride in the house, was hanging Christmas decorations with his two little sisters. Poppy was out in the garage getting Christmas lights out of boxes to hang around the outside of the house, and Jesse went outside to see him. "Hey Jesse, I didn't realize you were home." Smiling at his father, Jesse said, "You're getting an early start this year." His dad took the lights out of the original boxes. "Poppy, you're so organized. You have everything labeled." Laughing, his father said, "Easier that way, Jesse." They stood in the garage, getting the lights out and making small talk. Jesse wondered when it had all gotten so complicated. How do you move so far away from your parents emotionally that everything you say or they say is cause for a fight? He looked at his father, wondering what he thought about inside when he was alone. His father was a strong man physically, from years of hard labor, but it had never made him bitter, and Jesse liked that about him. They hung the lights on the outside of the house, and even though it had gotten dark, Poppy turned on all the floodlights to make it easier for them to see. Now everyone was standing on the small front lawn waiting for his father to turn on the switch, which he did amid so much applause. At the dinner table, his parents went silent when Jesse joined the family in prayer. His involvement in the dinner conversation was direct contrast to his usual sulking. It centered on the children he had been working with every day. Jesse was disappointed when Brady didn't show up for his lesson. The boy came for therapy 2 times a week, and Jesse had really taken to him. Jesse's original thought was that Brady might have gone on Christmas vacation with his family. But Jesse found out later in the day that he had ended up in the hospital due to seizure activity. Jesse surprised himself by the feelings he had for Brady. He found out which hospital Brady was in and made it a point to visit him. While Jesse was waiting for bus, he heard a whistle. He looked up and saw little Mario. Mario made an illegal turn in the middle of the street and pulled up to the bus stop. Several guys from the neighborhood were in the car. "Get in, it's party time," Tito said, opening the door. The minute Jesse was inside the car, he realized he had made a mistake. Tito had an open beer and there was a six-pack on the floor in the back seat. After a couple minutes in the car, Jesse realized they were not heading toward the neighborhood. "Where are you going?" he asked hesitantly. "Relax and have a beer," Tito said, in charge as always. "The valley," little Mario added. Jesse tried hard to fit in, but in his heart he did not want to be with them, looking for trouble. "What are you doing in the valley?" Jesse asked, knowing his family was missing him for dinner. "I got to pick up a car," Tito said in between sips of his beer. "Whose?" Jesse asked innocently. Tito turned to him with a nasty smirk. "What, have you been hanging out with those retarded kids too long?" Tito paused dramatically before continuing. "Anybody's car I want." Little Mario pulled into a 7-Eleven for cigarettes, and Jesse quickly jumped out of the car. "Where are you going, chump?" Tito demanded. "Anywhere you're not." And Tito, those kids got more strength and spirit in one finger than you'll ever have. Some cops drove slowly by in a squad car, and for the first time in his life, Jesse was glad to see them. The thought of all the challenges that those children faced made him feel small. How could he and his friends think their lives were so hard? How could he change that attitude? Jesse wandered down the street aimlessly for a block or two. He decided to find out where St. Joseph's Hospital was located so he could go and see Brady. He watched the Christmas lights on the storefront from the inside the warm bus and was reminded of home. Realizing that you could make yourself comfortable in your own skin by trying to do the right thing brought a smile to Jesse's face. He arrived at the hospital 15 minutes before visiting time was over. Jesse stopped at the nurse's desk and asked for Brady's room. The floor was decorated with Christmas cheer, but it all seemed dreary. Hesitating at the door to the room, Jesse peered in and could see Brady's little body asleep in bed. He stepped in. No one was there but Brady. After a few minutes, Brady's dad, Tom, came walking into the room with a cup of coffee in his hand. He was surprised and happy to see Jesse standing in the room. Tom gave him a rundown on Brady's health problems and all that had happened. When visiting time ended, Tom offered Jesse a ride home. At first, Jesse declined. He told Tom that he lived far from the valley, but Tom insisted on taking him home, and so they became friends. Jesse learned that Brady didn't have a mother, and that the woman who sometimes brought Brady to Pony Express was a babysitter. While swapping stories on the way home, Jesse realized that he could learn a lot about himself from other people. He realized that what people wanted in life was not at all different from his own desires: happiness, peace, family, and a good friend. Change comes whether you want it or not. Jesse knew it had come for him the moment he laid eyes on the children at the Pony Express. He knew it when he began feeling more and more disconnected from his friends. After 3 weeks of working, he began socializing with many of the young volunteers and people from Pony Express. They were not the kind of people he first imagined them to be. They were fun and had good attitudes. Jesse decided his number one goal should be to get his life at school together to make sure he would get a diploma. While growing up, Jesse had always thought you had to make a big impact. Well, it was more than that. It was the little things you did every day that made an impact. Like the way his father took care of his family, working hard to be an example of a good man. and the way Jennifer gave up big money at a private practice to work in a program that reached more children. Judge Warner could very easily have sent him to juvenile hall, but he had offered something else instead. Jesse looked around and realized he could go on and on. Examples were all around him, including his mother, who took care of her own, as well as her husband's aging parents. They were all part of that solution, and Jesse wanted to belong to that club. He knew those children with their broken bodies and powerful spirits had given him an early Christmas, and he was determined to share it with the world, one small piece at a time. The end.
So if you guys enjoyed these stories, there's actually 3 more in this book that we bought. It was called Christmas Stories by Kevin Moore. There are 7 stories in the collection, and I will be sure to link it in the description box. So if you guys would like to read the last 3 stories, you can. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and where's my phone? The next person who's going to be reading will be Mindy's Diamond Moments. She has the December 12th, 9th through the 12th. So go ahead and go over there tomorrow and check her out. Okay, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Bye.